Professor Lanny Guinier, who we lost just a couple of days ago, and she was someone I knew. She was instrumental in the 1982 Voting Rights Act amendments and was, of course, a pioneer and someone who did great work in this area. And as I think about having met her as a 22-year-old who was applying to law school at UPenn and had a chance to sit with her and just thinking about where we find ourselves in the 21st century, Jonathan. It's 2021. Why in the hell are we still talking about voting rights and fighting for voting rights? That should be something that's a fait accompli. It ought to be done. It's sacrosanct. It should not be tinkered with. It's something that the United States Senate must be held accountable for, and not just the Democrats. Make the Republicans go on the record. Don't let them stall. Don't let them duck and deny. That's not acceptable, and this should be a bipartisan issue. Of course, we know it's not going to be, but I really think that this is something that, as we think of Lanny Guinier's passing, I cannot believe that all these years later, we're still fighting about voting rights for people of color in this country.
You know what, Congresswoman? I mean, Sophia's absolutely right. I've been just saying, to friends and everything that, I get voting rights advocates and activists putting pressure on the president and the vice president and Democrats in Congress to do something about voting rights. But that gives a pass to Republicans, particularly in the Senate. Why won't you let the bill just come to the floor for a debate? No one's asking you to vote for it. It'd be great if you did, be American if you did, but just let the Senate debate the bill and then let it pass or fail on a simple majority vote. Congressman, why do you think Republicans are so afraid to have a debate on voting rights?
Well, I think that the Republicans are certainly led by people who do not want us to participate in this democracy. They do not want us to have voting rights because it gives us influence. It gives us power. It puts us at the table so that we can be advocates for the least of these. This is not something that they have any real issues about relative to how the system is working, whether it's this, that, or the other. This is about racism. This is about exclusion. This is about not wanting us to be able to participate in the policies that govern this country. Many people don't know what we're talking about when we keep saying the democracy is at stake. If we're not at the table, if we're not able to vote, if we can't get elected to office, everything is at stake.
Everything.
Fought for, whether it is, accommodations, public accommodations, whether it is proper supported education, whether it is health care. All of these things are at stake because it is the fight that we have had in order to open up and to get rid of racism and exclusion and to have voting rights that have brought us this far. And I'm really worried about what is happening at the local level. This president certainly has alliances with secretaries of state in certain states,
Ohio,
elected officials who are undermining our voting rights as we sit here and talk today. They are doing everything that they can to change the voting processes at the local level so that you'll have something like exact match. If you didn't dot the I and cross the T in your name, that gets thrown out as voter registration. They control the polling places. How many will be placed in a given area to determine whether or not people get the right to vote? The identification, all that we have fought for, and John Lewis trying to get back to Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act that says if you try these kind of things, you will be scrutinized. You have to come before the Department of Justice, and they can determine whether or not this is voter suppression. Well, the Supreme Court undermined that. And that's what John Lewis's bill is trying to do, get back that kind of scrutiny so that the local jurisdictions won't be able to do this. But we are fighting here in Washington, D.C. Clyburn is right. We could have a carve out, but we also better know what's going on at the local level. That's another level of this fight, and we're up against it. Democracy is really at stake.
Maria, I think you want to jump in on
Jesus.
So I don't usually post cartoons
on my social media, but this morning I saw a cartoon from the New Yorker from Liza Donnelly, and it was a shark underneath the Statue of Liberty, and the tip of the shark was coming close to the Statue of Liberty, and the shark is white supremacy. And so the tip of the iceberg, the tip of the shark is just what happened on January 6th. But the bulk of it is what we've been talking about on this show, and why it's so important, Jonathan, that you're hosting a Sunday morning talk show, right? Because what we are saying is we're talking about power, and the fact that because we're having this conversation doesn't mean that we're un-American. Because we are not white does not mean that we are un-American. What we are saying is that a democracy is a live thing, and we are participants in that. Do not, and I love what the Congresswoman just said, just let us talk about this. Do not deny us that right.
And Sophia, we've got 30 seconds. You're giving you the last word.
I just want to remember Professor Guinier, because she was someone who's instrumental in moving us along. Of course, we know that she didn't get that civil rights post in 1993, but Kristen Clark did now, someone that she mentored and knew. So justice always comes. We just have to be vigilant, and we have to have people like Lanny and Congresswoman Waters who aren't afraid to call a thing and do what needs to be done to save democracy.
Calling a thing a thing. Maria Hinojosa, Sophia Nelson, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, thank you all very, very much for coming to the Sunday show.